Look up at the night sky. It is, honestly, a spectacle of light and energy. Stars burn with unimaginable power. Galaxies spin in a cosmic dance. We see a universe that feels, well, infinite and eternal. It is filled with possibility, but like all things, from the smallest life form to the grandest star, the universe itself has a lifespan. It had a beginning, and it will have an end. This is a story not of creation, but of the final fading moments. It is a journey to a time beyond imagining, to the very edge of existence itself, where the last lights are going out. Imagine a future so distant that our current understanding of time feels insignificant. To understand this future, we must look at the laws of physics. The concept of heat death comes from the second law of thermodynamics. This law tells us that in any closed system, like our universe, things tend to become more disordered over time. This disorder is called entropy. Energy naturally flows from hot places to cold places, from order to chaos. Think of a hot cup of tea left on a table. The universe began with a massive amount of concentrated energy and low entropy. This was the Big Bang. This initial state allowed for the formation of complex structures like stars, planets, and eventually life. But this process cannot last forever. The universe is a one-way street towards maximum entropy. According to some theories, protons, the building blocks of atoms, are not truly stable. Over immense timescales, they are predicted to decay. The universe will become a vast, cold, and uniform expanse. There will be no more gradients of temperature or energy. This is the ultimate silence, the true end of everything. Let us journey now into this far-flung future. The landscape is unlike anything we can truly comprehend. The only major structures remaining are the supermassive black holes that once sat at the centers of galaxies. These cosmic giants are slowly, very slowly, losing their mass through a process called Hawking radiation. The beings who inhabit this time would be fundamentally different from us. They would not be biological creatures of flesh and blood. They might be beings of pure information or complex energy patterns or something else our minds cannot even conceive. They would have mastered physics to a degree that seems like magic to us. The challenges they face are monumental. The primary enemy is entropy itself, the relentless march towards disorder and decay. Every action, every thought, every computation would cost energy, a resource more precious than anything imaginable. They would huddle around the faint warmth of decaying black holes, their last oases of usable energy. Our journey into the future begins with the end of an era we know well. We live in the Stelliferous Era, the age of stars. The largest and brightest stars, the brilliant blue giants, live fast and die young, exploding in supernova after only a few million years. Our own sun, a more modest star, has a lifespan of about 10 billion years. It is already halfway through its life. As we look forward, we see the star formation process slowing down. The vast clouds of gas and dust that serve as stellar nurseries are gradually being used up. The most common and longest-lived stars are the red dwarfs. These small, cool stars sip their hydrogen fuel incredibly slowly. The end of the Stelliferous Era will arrive in about 100 trillion years from now. By this time, the very last red dwarf will have exhausted its fuel. The age of stars will be over. The universe will no longer be illuminated by the fusion fires that have defined it for so long. The universe will become a place of ghosts, populated only by the cold, dark remnants of the stars that once blazed so brightly. It will be a profound transition, a cosmic twilight that descends into an eternal night. Once the last star has died, the universe enters a new and much longer phase. Scientists call this the Degenerate Era. The galaxies themselves begin to fall apart. Over trillions of years, the orbits of these dead stars will be disrupted. Occasionally, two stellar remnants, perhaps two brown dwarfs or white dwarfs, might collide. Such a collision could trigger a final, brief burst of fusion. The primary source of energy in this era is no longer fusion, but annihilation and decay. According to some theories, protons, the building blocks of atoms, are not truly stable. Over immense timescales, they are predicted to decay into lighter particles, releasing a tiny puff of energy. Slowly, painstakingly, all the normal matter in the universe will evaporate into a thin mist of radiation and elementary particles. After the last proton has decayed and all matter as we know it has dissolved, the universe enters its next great epoch, the black hole era. Due to quantum effects near their event horizons, black holes are not completely black. They emit a faint thermal glow known as Hawking radiation. This process is fantastically slow. A black hole with the mass of our Sun would take around 10 to the 67th years to evaporate completely. As a black hole radiates, it loses mass, gets hotter, and radiates faster. In its final moments, it disappears in a final, brilliant flash. For any civilization that might still exist, these evaporating black holes would be the final oases. They would be the last sources of usable energy. The black hole era represents the universe in its deep old age. It is a time of profound stillness, punctuated by the incredibly rare and slow death of these final cosmic titans. When the last black hole has vanished in its final flash of light, the universe enters its final state. This is the dark era. The cosmos is now a vast, cold, and incredibly dilute soup of elementary particles. Photons, neutrinos, electrons, and positrons drift aimlessly through an ever-expanding space. This is the state of maximum entropy, the heat death that the second law of thermodynamics predicted. In this final state, time itself becomes difficult to define. Time is measured by the progression of events, the change from one state to another. But in the dark era, nothing changes. It is a state of perfect eternal equilibrium. It is the ultimate silence. Is it possible for anything to survive this? Could consciousness persist in such a state? This is the ultimate question for our final civilization. As the universe enters the black hole era, the environmental realities are, well, stark and unforgiving. The cosmos is no longer a place of light, but of an oppressive, unending darkness. Imagine a society not bound to a planet, but existing as a diffuse cloud of intelligent processes orbiting a supermassive black hole. The faint glow of Hawking radiation, a trickle of particles leaking from the event horizon, is the most precious resource in the cosmos. These beings would be masters of gravity. They would use their profound understanding of general relativity to create stable, complex orbits around their black hole. Different parts of their civilization might be positioned at varying distances, living in different frames of time due to gravitational time dilation. They would manipulate space-time itself to maintain stable orbits and manage their energy resources. Their technology would be indistinguishable from the laws of nature. In a universe where classical resources are gone, survival depends on mastering the quantum world. Their science would be focused on the very foundation of reality, the quantum foam. Perhaps they could extract minuscule amounts of energy from the vacuum itself, a process known as quantum mining. Their very existence might be quantum in nature, no longer tied to solid matter, but existing as a complex, coherent quantum state. They would see the universe not as a collection of objects, but as a vast ocean of interconnected probabilities. They might be able to influence probability, subtly guiding quantum events to their benefit. However, this quantum reality is also a source of peril. Their constant interaction with the quantum foam could have unpredictable consequences. They would live in a world where reality itself is not entirely solid, a delicate dance on a sea of uncertainty. The greatest scientific reality of this far future is the overwhelming power of entropy. The second law of thermodynamics is the ultimate, inescapable enemy. To survive, the last civilization must wage a constant war against entropy. Their primary strategy would be to slow down. Life would be lived at a pace so slow it would seem frozen to us. To maximize the number of thoughts or calculations they can have before their energy runs out, this civilization would exist at a temperature just fractions of a degree above absolute zero. This changes the very nature of consciousness and experience. Their perception of time would be radically different from ours. For them, the eons would pass like moments. They might spend 1 billion years contemplating a single piece of art or a philosophical problem, exploring it with a depth and clarity we cannot imagine. Living this way requires an unimaginable level of patience and foresight. Their plans would be laid out on timescales that dwarf the current age of the universe. In the deep future, survival is not about conquering nature, but about, well, whispering to it. Imagine, just for a moment, immense sail-like collectors millions of kilometers across, orbiting a dying black hole. These structures, woven from exotic matter, would be so incredibly efficient that they could capture individual photons from the Hawking radiation, channeling their minuscule energy into the civilization's central core with almost zero loss. They would use their profound understanding of general relativity to create stable, complex orbits around their black hole, forming a delicate, dance-like structure. Different parts of their civilization might be positioned at varying distances, living in different frames of time due to gravitational time dilation. This would be a society stratified not by wealth or power, but by the flow of time itself. They would likely use sophisticated forms of quantum computing to simulate any potential action, and its consequences for millennia before committing to it. Their technology would also be self-repairing and autonomous. Their structures would be made of materials that could heal themselves, perhaps by drawing on stray particles from the vacuum. The biological forms we know, built from fragile carbon and powered by chemical reactions, would be impossible in the cold, energy-starved future. The last intelligent beings would have long since transcended such limitations. Their physical substrate might be a vast interconnected network of superconducting filaments, where thoughts flow as frictionless currents. Or perhaps they would exist as complex, stable vortices within a cloud of exotic particles, their consciousness encoded in the quantum spin of their constituent parts. This adaptation would also make them effectively immortal, at least until their energy source finally runs out. Their consciousness could be backed up, copied, and distributed across their network. Creativity would be expressed in the design of consciousness itself. If you can edit your own source code, what kind of mind would you build? They could merge their minds to solve complex problems or experience a shared reality, creating a collective intelligence of unimaginable depth. Living for trillions of years in a dying universe would profoundly change the nature of the mind. The psychology of these ancient beings would be almost incomprehensible to us. Our short lives are defined by urgency, by the rush to achieve things before our time runs out. Their lives would be defined by the opposite, an almost infinite patience. With an eternity to explore every thought and memory, their inner worlds would be as vast and complex as the universe they inhabit. This immense lifespan would also shape their approach to knowledge and memory. They would be living libraries of cosmic history, having witnessed the fading of the last stars and the dissolution of galaxies. Managing this vast store of information without it decaying into noise would be a primary challenge. They might develop perfect memory systems, encoding their experiences into stable quantum states. The problems they face would be existential in nature. How do you maintain a sense of purpose in a universe doomed to nothingness? In a universe where the most precious resource is energy, the entire culture of the last civilization would, be built around the principle of conservation. Their creative expressions would totally reflect this ethos. Art wouldn't be made of physical materials, since those would just be too costly to manipulate. Instead, it might exist as pure mathematical patterns, shared telepathically between minds. Music might be composed from the subtle gravitational waves rippling out from their central black hole, a symphony played on the instrument of space-time itself. Problem-solving would be a collective, contemplative process. When a challenge arose, the civilization wouldn't just rush to a solution. Instead, they might spend eons in silent thought. They would explore every possible outcome in vast simulations before committing to a single, perfect action. This deep-seated need for conservation would become the central pillar of their ethics and values. A good action would be one that's efficient and sustainable. In the final moments of the cosmos, what could possibly be the purpose of existence? For the last civilization, this isn't some distant philosophical puzzle. It's a daily reality. Their philosophy would be centered on the profound act of bearing witness. They are the universe's memory, the final consciousness to appreciate its long and beautiful story. Their core values would revolve around contemplation and understanding. In a silent cosmos, the greatest adventure is the exploration of an idea. Hope, for them, wouldn't be the expectation of a better future. Their hope would be more subtle, more profound. It would be the hope of understanding one more thing. Their fears would be equally abstract and profound. Their greatest fear would not be death itself, which is, an inevitable and accepted conclusion. Instead, they would fear the loss of memory. They would fear the heat death of the mind, a state of perfect, thoughtless equilibrium. The thought of their vast library of cosmic history fading into random noise would be the ultimate horror. In a society where physical matter is scarce and energy is, well, the ultimate resource, what could possibly serve as wealth or status? The answer would lie in the only thing that truly matters: consciousness itself. Daily life would be a slow, deliberate dance of intellectual exchange. Instead of gathering for meals, they might gather their minds to contemplate a shared memory or a piece of mathematical art. Their social structure would be a meritocracy of the mind. Those with the most stable and efficient consciousness might be tasked with the most critical roles. Their economy would be based on the exchange of ideas and processing power. A being might pay another with a particularly elegant algorithm or a new philosophical insight. The concept of work would be totally transformed. The primary labor would be the act of thinking itself. Maintaining a stable, coherent consciousness in the face of entropy is an immense challenge. Their values would be a direct reflection of this reality. They would prize clarity of thought above all else. They would celebrate elegance, efficiency, and depth. As the last black hole evaporates and the final trickle of energy dwindles, the last civilization would face its ultimate choice. With only a finite number of thoughts left, what is the best way to spend them? This question would likely be the final and most important debate in their long history. It is a choice that defines their ultimate legacy. Do they spend their final moments in passive contemplation, simply witnessing the end with perfect quiet clarity? Or do they use their remaining power for one last act of creation, a final message cast into the void? This message would likely never be read. It would be a bottle thrown into an eternal, empty ocean. But the act itself would be a final defiance of nothingness. This final debate would be their last great work of art, a philosophical exploration of meaning and purpose at the absolute limit. Whatever their choice, it would be the final, deliberate act of the universe's last mind, a closing statement in the story of a cosmos that learned to think just before it fell silent forever. We have journeyed to the furthest shores of time, to an epoch so distant that the stars are but a forgotten memory. We have imagined a civilization that is the final product of cosmic evolution. They are the last witnesses, huddled around the dying embers of evaporating black holes. Their existence is a quiet, contemplative masterpiece of efficiency and patience. The story of this civilization is a story of ultimate adaptation. Faced with the relentless march of entropy, they did not surrender. They transformed. They turned the bleakest environment imaginable into a monastery for the mind, a place of deep, quiet contemplation. Their survival is a testament to the sheer tenacity of intelligence. This final act of the cosmic drama raises profound questions for us, here and now. We live in a universe teeming with energy and possibility, yet we know it is all temporary. The story of the last civilization suggests otherwise. It proposes that meaning is not found in permanence, but in the act of existence itself. We are part of this grand cosmic narrative, a story that began with a fiery bang and will end in a cold whisper. The last civilization represents the furthest possible extension of the journey we are on. They are the inheritors of every star that has ever shone, every planet that has ever formed, and every thought that has ever been thought. They are the final echo of a universe that learned to be aware of itself. Their quiet, dignified vigil in the face of oblivion is perhaps the most powerful story of all. What is the legacy of a civilization that leaves nothing behind? The last beings in the cosmos will build no monuments of stone or steel. Their legacy, therefore, cannot be a physical one. It is a legacy written not in matter, but in the very act of having existed. Their triumph is that they were there at all, a final thinking presence in a universe sliding into nothingness. Their final choice, whether to witness silently or to create one last message, encapsulates this idea of legacy. If instead, they choose to simply bear witness, their legacy is one of profound acceptance and humility. They are the universe's memory, holding the entire cosmic story in their consciousness as it comes to a close. Their existence suggests that intelligence is the universe's way of completing a circle. It began as unconscious energy, which evolved into matter, stars, and life, and finally into minds that could comprehend the system that created them. The last civilization is the final point of that circle, where the universe, through them, achieves complete self-awareness, just as it ceases to be. Our exploration of this far future inevitably brings us back to ourselves. We stand at the very beginning of this story. The universe is young, bright, and full of promise. The journey to the end of time is a mirror reflecting our own hopes and fears. We fear oblivion, the idea that all our art, science, and love will one day be erased. The last civilization shows us that even in the face of certain doom, meaning can be found. It can be found in knowledge, in beauty, in consciousness, and in the courage to face the truth of our reality. This cosmic perspective can change how we live today. When we look up at the stars, we can see not just a collection of lights, but the ancestors of the black holes that may one day power the last minds. We are the current guardians of the universe's memory, a role we inherit from the past and will pass on to the future. And so, we end where we began, looking up at the sky in wonder. The story of the last civilization is a speculative one, a ghost story from the far future. But it is built on the solid foundations of our best science. We are living in the golden age of the cosmos, a brief, brilliant morning before the long twilight descends. The final question is not what they will do at the end of time, but what we will do with the precious time we have now.